This week, mortgage broker Matt Oliver shares why he pivoted to reverse mortgages and the lessons learned from the 2008 housing crash. Back to the industry leader update. Last month, I came across a most interesting column on the Mortgage Professional of America website. Matt Oliver, who's with the Arizona-based Lund Mortgage, shared some of the lessons that he learned from the Great Recession and the housing crash of 2008. None of us have forgotten that. But also what caught my attention was his pivot to reverse mortgages. Now, Matt joins us today to share his journey and lessons learned. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Can you tell us briefly how you got your start in mortgage lending in general? I thought that part of the story was actually quite endearing.
Yeah, so I actually was working at Chase on the retail side doing home equity lines of credit. I think I started there maybe '03, '04, something like that. Actually, it was probably '02, but whatever, that's fine. I ended up meeting what was going to be my current wife, but at the time it would have been a future wife. But I met her and we were discussing, what we did for professions and whatnot. She said she was a mortgage broker, and I still remember to the day saying, like, why would anybody come to you as a broker? Why wouldn't they just come to Chase, like where we're at? Because at that time, being 23, 24 years old, I thought that was there was no reason to go anywhere else other than the big banks. But obviously at that age, being naive enough, you don't realize what's going on. So I still get joked on about that, about saying, why would you ever go to a broker anyways? And then I ended up starting with her and her dad, October of 2007, in the broker industry, oddly enough, which was a real fun time to start the industry, October of '07. So it got bad real quick.
Perfect timing, as they say, when you entered the industry. And ironically, our parent company started in November 2007. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So what are some of the lessons that you learned, since we're talking about the great housing crash and the recession? What are some of the lessons that you learned yourself or observed going on in the mortgage lending business?
Well, I guess I could say at that time, by 2008, I had started as I was 27, in '07, and obviously 2008, 28, and so on. But I was still real fresh in the beginning parts, like the first quarter of '08. And then you see, the banks start going out, the summer starts happening, more banks are going out. And I'm starting to think, holy crap, what's going on here? And I want to say August of '08, I think the company did a total of 5 loans the entire month. And that's significantly lower for what we're used to doing. So the good thing for me at that point of 2008 was I didn't have much, being 28 years old. So I couldn't lose anything if you don't have anything, financially speaking. So I did see a lot of people around me, though, that had massive houses, nice cars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, multiple houses, boats, all that kind of stuff. And I saw all of that dissipate. I saw the tragedies that just happened with that whole mortgage market collapse. And I just remember telling myself, and Lisa at the time, we were married. We actually got married at the end of 2008, which was another gem of a time. But I just remember saying, like, I don't ever want us to go through that experience, because I unfortunately got to see the downfall of a lot of really, really successful people and how hard it hit them. So luckily, I went through it at that younger age, where I said, when the market does pivot again, I don't want to be in that spot again. Let's not go out and get crazy and buy a bunch of exotic things that are just tools at the time, not tools, but I didn't want to buy all these exotic things at that time, multiple houses and crazy stuff.
Well, it's funny, especially with salespeople, it can be the double-edged sword. That confidence can also lead to hubris, and then you begin purchasing and living beyond your means. So during that year, you guys saw your loan production really drop, decimated. And of course, now we're not quite in the 2008 scenario, but we are definitely in a housing and a mortgage market shift. How did you deal with that shift, and what did you start doing differently to help substitute for some of those traditional loans that you were no longer doing?
We had primarily always been a refi heavier company. We advertised on a bunch of different radio stations out here in Arizona. And so, the low hanging fruit was easy, and especially with radio ads. Um, I would say the big pivot, one of them was going to reverse mortgages at that time. We had been doing a few, we just like, let's say 1 to 2 a month. I mean, we were getting up to 10 or 15 a month when the market hit the skids, because rates were less important on that product, and we knew it, and we knew how to sell the product in a proper way still. So rates were a lot less important on that. So that was the pivot at that point. Um, Obviously, we changed the radio narrative. Our advertising on the radio went to a lot more purchases. 90% of our ads were just directed solely to purchases, because refis were pretty much dead at that point. So the pivot, we always felt like we could pivot over to purchase when everything started falling. But the problem in Arizona was, at that time, we also didn't take into account, though, the limited supply of houses, and that really hit the Arizona market extremely bad. So not only were there not any refis, there were a lot less purchases than had been in the years past. So that's where we did pick up the reverse mortgage side quite a bit. Started focusing more attention on those. With reverse mortgages, as soon as you do something right for that one client, that they tend to tell 10 other ones. So it's if as long as you're doing what's best for the client on that one, you will pull some other leads back out of that source if you're doing what's right.
Well, you're absolutely right. Your boots on the ground. You're seeing it. Inventory is really decimated. The way I'm seeing it right now, Matt, is you have both the home purchaser, or prospective buyers, and the home sellers standing on the sidelines. The home sellers are like, I'm not selling my house at this price. Or some of them still try to sell it at a 2021 price at 2023 interest rates. But that being said, I think the shift to reverse is very intriguing. Let me ask, what is your favorite part of doing reverse mortgages? What's your takeaway on that?
I mean, I think the best part of it is the most exciting part for me is really changing someone's opinion of it, if I got to be honest with you, because we we're pretty close to Sun City out here in Peoria, Arizona, which is a retirement community. So it's a really big retirement community. But we started doing some ads saying FML, and it would be facts, myths, and lies about reverse mortgages. Just a way to kind of garner attention from it. But just the initial conversation from someone that's not a fan of it or really doesn't want to hear about it, it's actually enjoyable if I can get someone to take 5 minutes and let me run through it. And I'll go through the cons of a reverse mortgage right off the bat. Like, let's get that out of the way. Let's discuss it. What are your fears, your thoughts, your concerns about it? Because let's hit it head on. And then if that's the worst that we got, everything else I'm going to tell you from here on out is icing on the cake. So I think the most enjoyable part is it tends to be changing someone's narrative or negative views on a product that they really don't have a clue about. It's just facts, myths, and lies.
FML. It's very interesting. I like that. It's catchy advertising. It is satisfying because, that understanding or being able to get someone past those facts, myths, and lies, as you call them, also changes their life. And that's a super rewarding part of reverse mortgage lending. Now, we have kind of a mix. We're seeing, Matt, more people from the traditional mortgage market getting into reverse mortgage lending, but we also have a lot of originators who have been doing this for 10, 15 years, some maybe a little less at 5 years. What skills or systems that you've used as a broker in the traditional mortgage market can reverse mortgage professionals benefit from?
I think the one that drives in the most for us, well, there's two of them. One is the communication, and just really taking the time to address their concerns, and walking them slowly through the process. But the other angle of it is I'd rather do a lot more quantity than make a lot more on one individual loan. I mean, we get told all the time when we're asking for quotes from reverse mortgage companies, hey, this person's making the standard is a 2.75 margin, and then they're charging 6,000 in origination. Well, I'll undercut the heck out of that. I'd rather do 10 of those than just do two of them and feel like I'm sticking it to somebody. I really just treat everybody like, what loan would I want to give my grandmother, my great grandmother, elderly people in my life? What kind of loan would I want them to be getting? So, I mean, that's really how I look at it. It's everybody that I'm advising is almost someone that I'm advising a family member.
So you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of, extra spread or pricing on one transaction, make it a little bit lower and get more transactions. Is that correct?
Yeah, it goes back to the same thing I said earlier, where I feel like they will go the elderly, not the senior citizens, I should say, they're real big on communication, especially if they got a reverse mortgage and 10 other people. The best part is if they go to their little, bunko games and they say, I just got a reverse mortgage, and everybody gasps and says what a dumb idea that was, because those people are going to sell them before I even talk to them. They're going to sell to the people that were against it. So we found that to be a real good method is let the senior citizen that went through it be your voice of reason or voice of sales on the outside of it.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I read in the article that was in the Mortgage Professional of America is the role of a database. And I have a lot of friends that work in mortgage lending like yourself, and I would say they're very disciplined about their database. What are some of the things that you've done in the past that have worked for you, whether it's traditional or reverse? And what can the reverse mortgage professionals watching right now learn from your process?
I think on a lot of that is just trying to pick out. I try to listen to the client and pick out one or two or three things that client may say that I can make a note in the database about. I'm a huge Chiefs fan. I have been forever, not just now that they're winning Super Bowls, but I'm a big Chiefs fan right now. And if I hear somebody say they're a Raiders fan, even though I don't like the Raiders, I will make a note of that. So then when I call the client the next time, what we can pick up, we just start picking up as if we've been friends for a long time. Hey, the Raiders had a terrible season last year. So I think something that you can hear each client bring up that they like to do, or their hobby or their profession or something, keeping that part in your notes really makes a big difference, because I will get people that say, I can't even believe you remembered that. Well, little do they know I got it written down in a note side, but I did hear it the first time to be able to make the note. And I do feel like that's a big part of your database, and making them feel connected to you by still keeping that personal one-on-one touch with them. We have always, obviously, with us advertising on the radio, when the consumer is calling in, we're trying to get as much information, but without irritating them as well, as far as keeping a name, a phone number, and maybe an email address right off the bat. Because, like, especially in the heyday of 2020 and 2021, there were so many calls coming in, so many refis happening. Having that data is almost invaluable as well, because now they're in our database. We can keep hitting them on a constant drip campaign, or saying happy birthday, sending birthday cards, that kind of stuff. So I really think just listening to the client and taking good notes in your database, as well as starting a database, no matter when that is the key on that.
How have you leveraged some of your previous traditional mortgage borrowers, 15, 30, or whatever it might be, into reverse mortgage sales using your database?
Most of that's just based off the age, right? So we're trying to have the conversation with them when they get of age. I'm usually trying to do 65. If I can do after 70, that's even better. But just having the conversation with them about what the benefits of it are. Again, I go right into it and say the cons are, this is going to eat away a little bit of your heirs inheritance. Is that going to bother you? And a majority of them say no, and then that almost kind of like makes them more excited to do it, because they're like, wait a minute, why am I saving all this money for my heirs? I should be enjoying it in my latter part of life. So I think going right at that, or trying to reach out to them at the right time, age wise, and explaining to them why they should be doing this and how much better it will make their living situation from there on out.
So you can leverage those previous borrowers. Maybe they got a loan 10 years ago, but now they're 65, and you give them a call.
Yeah. I mean, just based off that time frame, either that, or we will start putting them in just a general reverse mortgage email campaign. Maybe a reverse mortgage email goes out once a month or something. So we're not necessarily calling them and bugging the heck out of them, but we're just putting little tidbits of information in their ear if they choose to read the email, and go from there. So I just, once they get to that particular age, the emails start going out differently to them.
Excellent. Just one last thing to ask you, since we've got you here, we're going to pick your brain for a little wisdom. What would you say to our reverse mortgage professionals watching today? Any advice you have as someone with traditional mortgage lending experience and reverse?
I think on the reverse mortgage side, it's just to take it. I don't necessarily want to say slowly, but work at the borrower's pace. You want to try to manage that with them, right? You don't want to give them a 2 months off or whatnot. But I'm saying the more that they can feel like they're in control of the pace, the better off you are. Like, I'm not trying to force this upon you. I just really feel strongly that it's one of the best mortgage products out there right now. I mean, other than the VA product, what's better? I mean, my other opinion is in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot more people doing reverse mortgages because the generations passing through that got pensions. Pensions are dying. Those are dying product. So you're going to see a lot more people doing reverse mortgages in the years to come. So the more knowledge you can get on it, the better it would be. That's another key for the younger generation to start understanding the product and learning the product right now. But I will say, depending on your age, you do have to go slow with that. If you're a 30-year-old talking to a 70-year-old or 75-year-old about retiring and whatnot, you better let them steer the ship on the conversation a lot of times, because you've never walked a mile in those shoes at that point. But
That
also, but also think about you are talking to, someone's relative. Pretend like it's yours. And I do think as long as you're doing that, you always should be guiding them on the right path moving forward from there.
Excellent point. I think that's where listening is a skill that's often lost amongst salespeople, but it will open up sales, ironically. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
And that wraps up another edition of the Industry Leader Update. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Let us know what you thought about our interview with Matt, or if you have questions for him, I will be sure to get those to him as well. And don't forget, you can share this video on your LinkedIn and Facebook profiles. We also have a YouTube channel. Be sure to smash the subscribe button. That way you never miss an upcoming episode. And each and every week, you can get your reverse mortgage news just as simply as putting in a couple of earbuds. We've got it all here for you at Heck 'em World Weekly. Apple users can listen and subscribe on iTunes. Thanks again for joining us, and be sure to return next week for more reverse mortgage news, commentary, and analysis here at Heck 'em World.